US Nationals for Flesh and Blood are well underway, and actually by the time this video goes live, Day 1 play will be close to, if not already, wrapped up. The results of this weekend, as well as last weekend's Nationals event in the UK, will shape the face of Flesh and Blood constructed play for the next 2 to 3 months at a minimum. This is true even at the strictly casual level, as the top decks and heroes cause a trickle-down effect for everyone at every level. Now, it's no secret that Briar, and specifically her Lightning build, seem to be very well positioned, and dare I say favored, going into the weekend. This particular build is high efficiency, has relatively straight lines of play, which make it great for the long grind such as Nationals. Furthermore, it can output a tremendous amount of damage with relatively minimal effort. Now, whether she wins or not, if Briar does indeed have a strong showing at the top tables, as I and I think most of us expect her to, there are going to be both positive and negative impacts for the short-term future of this game. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, Flesh and Blood folks. Welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again, a fabulous cast. Thanks for hanging out with me this evening. I wanted to start today by giving everyone who's made their way down to Orlando, just wishing you guys good luck. I hope that you got down there safe, everything's working out for you there, you'll get back safe, but also that you'll have a good time, and whatever your success criteria of that is, whether it just be a vacation, hang out with buddies, or whether it be some performance metric, whatever that may be, I hope it works out for you and have a good time. I also want to give a special shout out to Adam, DC Team Guy, who's down there right now. We haven't heard from you yet, man, so I'm hoping that's a good sign, that you're too busy kicking butt and taking names. So best of luck. Let us know which deck you decided to. We thought you were going to go Levia, but I know there was some last minute jitters there. So let us know what you're playing, and again, good luck. Also, one last thing of bookkeeping. We're having the weather today is it's partly cloudy, and I'm having a hell of a time getting the light balanced today. It's my 5th time trying to do this shoot. So we're just going to roll with it, and if it goes dark and stuff, then you'll forgive me, but I know you're here for the fab and not for this. So, all right. So yeah, today's a little bit of a speculation, theory crafting type of, not really theory crafting in the traditional sense, but kind of a meta speculation and looking at the future, right? So, I mean, I don't think it's a groundbreaking statement like we've been talking about that. Briar's pretty well positioned. She's very, very popular going into this weekend. So, the impact of that, even like I talked about in the intro, even at the casual level, the trickle-down impact of that is real, right? I mean, we know that when Chane was popular, that people were doing certain includes in their decks for that reason. I include anti-Prism cards in my Dorinthea Blitz deck even, right? I mean, because of her power level. And I mean, that's the way these games go, right? So the impact of that's going to be real because you have to play the meta. I mean, that's the way it is, right? So that's the reason for talking about this. Now, Briar has a lot of really specifically. I mean, I think the Earth Briar build's actually pretty cool, but the Lightning Briar has a lot of things going for it, right? I mean, first and foremost, the deck is relatively cheap, right? Now we can talk about some of the specific cards in a minute, but if you look at the bulk of the decks, right? Let me pull up Sharif's deck from UK Nationals, right? Aside from some of the stuff I'm putting up right now, aside from some of the stuff that you would expect, like, CNCs and Easter eggs, if you look generally at the list, it's primarily rares and commons, right? Overall. And so outside of the equipment and outside of, some of the big cards, that's pretty normal. Also, just for comparison, so Aaron Boyan's Briar is also from the UK deck. It's slightly different, but it's very, very similar. You see that, aside from, the big two in the deck and then the equipment, you're looking at a relatively cheap deck. And speaking about the big cards, right, the expensive portions of this deck, right? I mean, we just got done reviewing the deck list, and of course, the Easter eggs, the CNCs, the expensive equipment that's in there. But in many cases, there are pretty reasonable substitutes for those that can do it can fill many of those things. I mean, I'm not saying that like a Blossoming Spellblade is anywhere close to being a Command and Conquer. That's not what I'm saying, especially in this case where that one you're not going to do the double fuse on. But you see my point. There are a lot of cards that you could include that's going to, give you your 6 if you run in the Prism matchup, and you can handle that. And even on, so you could have Rites of Replenishment, which is actually not a bad card in itself, right? Blossoming Spellblade. You could run Evergreen if you want, which actually I think Sharif was running Evergreen in his Lightning just for like a recycle, or just for like recycle or fatigue. So, those are very viable alternatives in this case to just fill those slots if you don't have them, right? So at your local armory level or whatever you may be wanting to do, you could run those. And when it comes to the equipment, right? I don't have a Tunic. You guys will know that. Either Ironweave, right? That's what I was running. I mean, that's a pretty decent card, right? It actually blocks for 1, it has Battle Worn, then you can pop it for your 2 resources that you can use to pay for stuff, right? I mean, that's kind of what you're trying to do. You also, she runs Snappies anyway, right? So I've seen some people run the not the Creepers, but the Sutcliffs. Well, I guess that one's a common. But even if you are running the Creepers, I think that one's probably more like an Earth build anyway. And then you also have, like, if you don't have the gloves, right? If you don't have the Runeblade gloves, or the grasps, you can run the grasp. You can run Mark of Lightning, right? I mean, it's a one-use thing. It of course doesn't defend the same, but it'll let you slide in some extra damage. And actually, there's nothing they can do about that damage, right? So you could certainly make the argument for Mark of Lightning as well. So, with that said, right, considering this in a budget build or a newer player-friendly build is certainly something that makes this deck feel a lot more approachable from a lot of levels, right? Which is kind of neat. It's great, right? I love stuff like that because then you don't need to worry about, the price and stuff, and you can just play the game, right? But on the flip side, right, that means it's a relatively easy entry point. So from that, which is not a bad thing, it's not a complaint, right? But I'm saying that the impact / fallout of that is that you get something like, to a certain extent, the Ira phenomenon, right? Ira was a relatively easy deck to, it's actually, there's a lot of parallels between Lightning. There are a lot of parallels between Lightning, Briar, and Ira, actually, right? In that it's relatively cheap, relatively easy to assemble, relatively consistently easy to pilot, right? And you guys see, I do think that that's a relatively fair type analysis, right? And that end of it, that's a positive. It's a positive that there's a relatively easy entry point. I think when I go back and I do like my top 5 heroes to start out with, I think Briar's probably going to be on there, right? Because she can be relatively easy, so that's a positive. That is 100% a positive for the game from a player standpoint. The negative of that is that those decks become prevalent and lead to fatigue, right? We use the term Ira fatigue all the time when talking about Blitz, right? So that is something that's relevant to consider, that because it becomes easy, new players can come in, you're just like, oh my god, you get just as right. People avoided Blitz in general. A lot of the reason people hated Blitz so much at the end was because they were tired of seeing Ira all the time, and it could be the same type of thing. And then you can make the analogy or the jump, the similarity, whatever it may be, to Chane at Las Vegas, right, where people were getting exhausted of Chane leading up to Las Vegas, and then, the results came in and 45% of the field was Chane. And, I'm not going to say that Briar is going to be 45% of the field. I think she could be, right? She probably could be, but I don't know. We'll see. But that's neither here nor there, right? The comparison and the discussion I wanted to have around comparing Briar and Chane is actually, I think Briar will be a big, right? So let's say that Briar becomes just as dominant as Chane, right? And whether you agree with the Chane nerf or not, whether you agree that it should have happened or not or whatever, isn't relevant, because LSS made, based on what they were seeing, LSS made the decision that Chane was too prevalent, right? So going off of that info, going off of that baseline, if Briar were to be 50% of the field or something like that, then they would, again, using that past data point, they would make a similar decision, right? They make a similar decision. So, then based on that, though, one of the concerns I have comparing Briar to Chane in that case, in terms of the future, in terms of controlling it, is I don't think you can, right? Look, again, I'll put up these deck lists, right? What are you going to, it's just a, Lightning Briar is basically just a good stuff deck, right? It's just good, plunder runs, nimbleisms. Sure, there's some, ball light, but if you take ball lightning out, didn't you just trash lightning in the entire set? You know what I mean? So it's not like you can just go out and take a seeds, right? You can't just go ban seeds, because banning seeds took Chane down. He did. It took him down a notch, right? Which is not a bad thing, right? But by that same logic, what do you do for Briar, right? You can't go just get rid of nimbleism, right? So what do you do in that case if you can't get rid of nimbleism or whatever? I'm not arguing get rid of them, but you see what I'm saying, right? There's, in my opinion, when I look at the Briar lists, there's no easy way to take her down a notch, right? Aside from just getting rid of Rosetta Thorn. But then, and maybe that's good enough. I don't know. But, I don't even know that Rosetta Thorn would be good enough, right? Because a lot of her bonus is the fact that she can just keep piling on the damage and then at the same time beefing her defense on the next turn. That's what she does. Now, sure, being able to swing for 2 packets of 2 at the end once you do what you already wanted to do is very, very strong. I'm not taking that away, but how do you chain nerf Briar? I don't know that you can in the same fashion, right? So I think that's more where my head is, right? So I think it's really great that we're having a very, very good deck that's relatively easy. It's fantastic, right? Easy entry point, relatively easy entry point, easy to learn, hard to master, of course, but you can do pretty well out of the gate with it, relatively cheap. But on the other hand, because it's good stuff deck, if they ban something, a lot of these rares and commons have very similar analogs in a lot of other cases. So even if you were to hit one, then you just backfill it with something that's slightly less efficient. Whereas, in the seeds case, Chane didn't quite have that. There wasn't a 1-cost seeds, which I do think, by the way, is coming out in the supplemental set. But we'll see. So anyway, hopefully you guys are understanding what I'm saying here is that, we're kind of on the precipice and we'll see where this goes here. And that's why I do think we should be really paying attention to what happens this weekend, not just out of curiosity from the competitive standpoint, but on what the trickle down is going to be. Right? Are we going to be facing Briar every other match we play until the supplemental set comes out? Right? I do think it's a valid question. Now, yes, people will maybe figure out how to do it, how to fight it, but aside from, I don't know, I think she's going to be, if she's as good, so let me finish with this, right? If she ends up being as good as a lot of us think she's going to be, I think she's going to be harder to rein in than a Chane, right? So and then you get kind of the Ira type problem, right? So again, I'm not saying there's positives and negatives of this, right? If she performs the way, there's going to be positive and negatives of it. But I think we need to be aware of, what the impacts of those are going to be, and then, kind of put some thought into how we want to approach it, or what we think we could do. So anyway, let me know, especially if you guys are down there, let me know what you guys are seeing, what you guys are thinking, what your guys' impressions are. And I want to, be very clear about this. I played Lightning Briar in the first Classic Constructed tournament we had at Gongai. I brought Lightning Briar. Now, it was not as optimized as some of the ones these guys are playing. They've had more time. They're obviously better deck builders than I am. But again, I'm not saying that if you play Lightning Briar, you're a bad person. It's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's not a good deck. It's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's too good. I'm not saying anything, right? All I'm saying is, the results of this weekend are going to dictate what we see a lot of coming forward. And I see a lot of parallels between Lightning Briar good deck to Ira, and I also see that if she's right, and then in comparing her like to the Chane, I don't see how you fix her the same way, which I think makes her more of a long-term potential problem. So we'll have to see how it all goes. Like I said, just here speculating. Some thoughts I was having this afternoon. Thanks guys for hanging out with me, and chatting. So again, if you're down there, let us know how things are going. Look forward to talking with everybody when they get back, or even if they're down there. So anyway, have a great time, folks. Thanks for tuning in with me this evening, and go Commando.